Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic living guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode.
Hello and welcome to this episode. And this is a bit of a deviation from my normal theme of Nordic traditions and simple, intentional Nordic life, because I want to talk to you about chickens. And I wrote a blog post about this a few weeks ago, but I'm such a firm advocate of keeping chicken. I really wanted to do a podcast episode about it as well, because I know not everybody who listens to the podcast reads my blog and vice versa. So now you get to hear me talking about chickens as well. So if you're really not into chickens, now is the time to turn off and go listen to another episode. But if you're on the fence, maybe I'm going to be able to convince you that keeping chickens is a good idea, because I have 7 great reasons for keeping chicken. And if you follow me on social media, on my Instagram or Facebook page, or if you're in the Living a Nordic Life Facebook group, if you're not, come and join us because we'd love to see you there. You will know that I am constantly posting about my hen. I try to limit it a little bit because I don't want to bore everybody to death about them, but they are really great. Over lockdown, chicken keeping became really popular in Norway. It was crazy and beyond. I know in the US it was pretty much the same. It was because people had so much more time on their hands and they were home. A lot of them were not able to go to work at all, or they were working from home, and all that time that they would have spent commuting was freed up. And maybe they had in the back of their mind that they wanted to keep chickens at some point, and this seemed like a good opportunity to do it. There was also a trend towards simplifying life that has really just turned into some kind of roller coaster, hasn't it? It's huge. Everybody's looking to simplify their life. We don't need it to be complicated. But like I said, more time at home meant that people could devote more time to a hobby or an interest or something that we had wanted to do for a long time and we simply didn't feel that we could do it. And this was especially true in Norway. There was this huge surge in chicken keeping at home, hence in Hagen, it's called chickens in the garden. So much so, can you believe this, that the agriculture shops were regularly selling out of chick crumb, that's the special food that we give to chicks, and equipment like incubators. Incubators are like hen's teeth here. They are so rare. If you want one, you have to order it, or you have to get in there and get it straight away. And you see all these posts as well on the internet of people looking for incubators. You can even rent them. We bought our first incubator actually this year. And we had to wait weeks for it because we saw one in the agriculture shop and it was gone. And it's the same with the chicken food. So many people now keep hens after lockdown that quite frequently they sell out of chicken food, or they sell out of sawdust, which we put on the floor of the chicken coops. But I'm always also surprised at the people I meet who keep chicken. In fact, I was talking to somebody today. It's completely unrelated to anything to do with chickens. I didn't meet her there. Anything to do with chickens, but she has a lot of chickens. We were talking about her new hens. I don't know if she listens to this, but if you do, hi, because you know what I'm talking about. She has got some new blue Orpingtons, and we spent ages talking about her chicken and about my chickens, and it's really funny, these things that people share. All chicken enthusiasts seem to be, chicken keepers rather, seem to be enthusiastic. And just like me, they're ready to advocate for chicken keeping with everyone. So if you've ever pondered the idea of keeping chicken, let's share some of the greatest reasons to jump in and do it. And I think also after this, I'm going to record another podcast, which Andre had a great idea about, and that is 7 reasons not to keep chicken. Because I'm not going to lie and pretend that chicken keeping is all unicorns and rainbows and skipping lambkins, because it isn't. But let me share the really good benefits of keeping chickens first. The first one is they give you eggs. It's most people's reason for keeping chickens, isn't it? And it's the most obvious reason. Free range eggs, if you can allow your chickens out into the garden. From your own hens, so much better than shop bought ones. They taste better. They better. And you know exactly what your hens have eaten and how they've been kept. If you're lucky, or you do some planning, you can also have hens who lay beautiful coloured eggs. And we found that it's often the hens that have the drabbest, dullest, most boring looking feathers who lay the prettiest coloured eggs. The taste isn't usually any different, I have to say. But it's one of life's simple pleasures to collect blue or turquoise or dark brown chocolate coloured eggs from the coop each day. And here's a little tip. If you decide that you're going to incubate chicken from eggs yourself, whatever colour egg they come out of is the colour of the egg they're going to lay when they grow up to be an adult. That's assuming that they grow up to be hen and not cockerels, because cockerels do not lay eggs, as I'm sure you know. Number 2, great companion animals. Chickens are surprisingly sociable, and not just with each other. You should never keep a chicken alone, and you should never keep just 2 chickens, really. They're not happy unless they're in 3, 4, 5, 20, 100. Then they love it. But they're also really friendly with their humans. They want to be with you and they want to spend time with you. And if you hatch your hens from eggs yourself and you raise them as chicks and you spend lots of time with them, they see you as part of the flock. And they'll come running to you, they want to cuddle, and they even preen you. And for those of us who do gardening, we often find that whenever we're out in the garden, we have this kind of entourage of hens following us around for snacks that we might grub up. Because chickens love a worm, can you believe that? And they love caterpillars as well. Or simply because they want to be with you and they are pretty nosy, so they want to see whatever you're doing. We used to have a hen called Hedwig, and she was an enormous Sussex. She was huge. She was the biggest hen that we had. She weighed a good, probably 3 or 4 kilos, which is about 6 or 8 pounds. She was very gentle. But she didn't always want to be with the rest of the flock. And if we were outside doing something, she would come up to us and she would follow us around making these funny little boo, boo, boo noises because she wanted to see what we were doing. And she would just stand around and watch us or just wait for things or sit down next to us. She was really sociable. Number 3, they keep you on your toes. And before I kept chickens, I assumed that they were this kind of average, slightly dull bird. Because you don't realise until you actually keep them. But I couldn't have been more wrong. You read a lot from chicken keepers about how clever chickens are, but everybody tells you about how clever their pet is, don't they? And it's not until you experienced it yourself that you really understand just what they're like. I mean, obviously you get the particularly clever ones, and you also get particularly dull ones that really don't have, very many brain cells to rub together, and you get everything in between. But generally, they're really quick-witted and they're incredibly fast learners. The very first chicken that we had was called Chip. Unfortunately, she died last year. It was a really bizarre accident, which I won't go into, involving 2 other chickens, actually. But she was really quick to learn, and she would learn new commands in about an hour. And she responded every time to her name. She didn't just put her head up, she would actually come to you. In fact, when we raised her from an egg, when she hatched from an egg and we raised her as a chick, she didn't have a chicken mother, it was us. And Minnie, my eldest daughter, taught her to perch on her hand within like a couple of weeks old. And she was doing that. We should have realised then how clever she was, but we hadn't kept chickens before, so we had no idea. But it was really useful to teach her new commands because she was head of the flock before we got our cockerel. And if we wanted the flock to do something, we just had to teach Chip. And she would do it, and then the other hens would follow her or they would learn from. So it was great. Research has shown that chickens can recognise up to 100 different faces. Can you believe that? 100, that's a lot, isn't it? And they have 18 vocalisations, which is language, chicken language, if you like. But, and the downside of that is they can easily outwit you if they decide they want to work together. And I frequently find one distracting me while another one, or the rest of the flock, is doing something they shouldn't be doing. And again, on the subject of Hedwig, the flock used to use her as a lookout, and she wasn't very good at it. So they would be doing something, and I would see Hedwig standing on her own, and she presumably was supposed to be lookout for the flock, and they positioned her there while they went off into the field or whatever it was they were doing they weren't supposed to be doing. But I always knew when something was up because she would have her back to us. So she was supposed to be looking out, but instead she was watching the flock. And then we would find the rest of the chickens doing something they wouldn't be, but Hedwig was like our red flag. Next point is chicken poo is great for compost. It's amazing for compost. I'm going to post some pictures of my vegetables actually that I have growing in chicken poo compost. Now, it does need to be composted for quite a while, I have to say, but it is incredible. And this was actually my first reason for keeping chickens. It was quite a few years ago, and I had a friend who had chickens on her little farm, and she said that the poo was great for tomatoes and things like that. So she gave me this big bucket of chicken poo. And I put it on my tomato plants, and it was like some kind of tomato plant rocket fuel. You would not have believed it. I had the best tomatoes I had ever grown that year when I mixed the chicken poop in with my compost, the normal. It was kind of compost that we were using from our own compost heap, but also some that we had bought. And this sowed a seed for me. And it was not long after that that Andre and I decided that we would get hens ourselves. So, of course, I started composting their poop because you get quite a bit of it, especially when you've got, 20-odd hens like we've got. You have to clean it up every day. But once you get it onto the compost and you stir it into your compost heap, it doesn't smell. And it is amazing. You have this ready supply of the most incredible fertiliser ever. And if you're being careful with what you feed your hens as well, you can even go so far as to have an organic fertiliser. How cool is that? Anything that you grow in it is just going to be amazing. Huge courgettes, huge if you want courgettes, a lot of people don't, do they try to get rid of them? Huge tomatoes, amazing lettuces, everything. Flowers, it's just soup. Hens keeps the pests down. And I know that Andre will not always agree with this one, because there are so many times when our flock behaves like some kind of industrial digging crew in the garden, which is great if you want them to move soil from one place to another, or you kind of dug up an area and decided that you're going to do something with it and it needs turning over a little bit more. It's brilliant for that, but they're not going to stay there. They're going to go off and do other things. But honestly, I am not joking. They can probably move a ton of earth in about an hour, about 6 or 8 of them. And the worst offenders are actually the smallest ones, our bantam cochins, that are tiny little things. Gosh, their tiny little legs can move like, as they're going along and trying to find worms, and they're moving the soil to the next one. And then that hen will move it and go through it and move it to the next one. And before you know it, you've got this enormous hole and then an enormous pile of soil. And then they're done with that, on to the next place. But they eat all the insect pests in the garden. They're brilliant. Slugs, snails. They will even eat mice if they can catch them. Mine haven't eaten any snakes yet. They do like a nice big juicy worm, and some of those are about the size of a small snake. But they do hunt the little birds from time to time, especially the sparrows, I'm sorry to say. It doesn't scare the sparrows off at all. They're still inside the chicken enclosure if they can get in there. But it reminds me of that scene from Jurassic Park, it's called Domino or something, this Jurassic Park film. I can't remember, it's the latest one. Not the animated one, but the one before. And it's about this enormous T-Rex that they kind of genetically modified. The velociraptors are running through the forest and you've got the guy on the motorbike. The hens are just like that when they're hunting the sparrows. It's a bit frightening, actually. The sparrows get away, I have to say. But that's what they're like. And they do really like to eat all their bits and pieces in the garden. So like I said, slugs, caterpillars, they're really good at sorting these things out. They keep you grounded. Keeping animals keeps us grounded anyway. And if you want to read a bit more about that, have a look on my blog. I wrote a blog post about it. It's quite important and it's very good for us. And it reminds us that we are not the centre of the world. It's been proven that sharing our lives with animals, feeding them, caring for them, is excellent for our mental health, physical health as well, actually, because we're moving about, aren't we? And I'm sure that most pet owners do actually agree with me. It's hard to wallow in self-misery or unhappiness when you have a flock of happy, boisterous chickens who want your attention. And they're cuddly as well. Everybody needs a bit of a cuddle. They're rarely sad or unhappy. If they are, you can always cheer them up. And they do get sad and unhappy, you can always tell, because their tails are down. And they always want to spend time with you, call you over, or in the case of mine, holler at me as I'm getting out the car, and ask for treats. But they keep you grounded. They remind you to be in the present. They give you meat. And this is a difficult one because I wasn't actually sure if I was going to include this one, but it is a point that a lot of people like to make if they're keeping chickens. And it is something that you might want to consider. Is also, the meat question is a question that we absolutely have to address at some point as chicken keepers. If we're raising chickens from chicks or eggs, if you buy adults, that's different. The reason for this is that you can never tell if you are going to get a cockerel or a pullet, that's a young hen, from simply looking at an egg. Can't tell, you don't know what's inside. And you can rarely tell from looking at a young chick either. You have to be really experienced to be able to look at a chick and see if it's a cockerel or... You can tell from their wings, they have slightly different wings, but it's not always right, I have to say. So the cockerel question will always arise. Do I keep the cockerels or not? And if I do keep them, how many do I keep? Because lots of cockerels don't usually get on very well together. If the answer is no cockerels, then you have to consider what you're going to do with them. For lots of chicken keepers, this means dispatching them and eating them. Yeah, I know it's a hard choice, but in animal husbandry, it's one we must face. If you could sell the cockerels to somebody else who wants a cockerel and they're going to have it in their flock, that's wonderful. But if you have a brood of eggs, let's say 8 eggs, that's a smallish number, isn't it? You don't know whether you're going to get 50% hens and 50% cockerels. You'd like to think that, but you might get 7 cockerels and 1 hen, or 7 hens and 1 cockerel. It can be any number of computations within those 8 eggs. But if you allow a cockerel to grow to maturity, you dispatch it in a fast, efficient and humane way. That's really, really, really important. And that's not something you can do on a, first go. Well, let's have a quick look on YouTube and see how to do this and then go off and do it after 5 minutes looking. You really do need to know what you're doing. And you could do that in an environment that's not stressful. And it's immeasurably better than the chicken you buy at the supermarket that will not have led the happy life that your chicken has done. So a hard question to ponder. And if you're considering keeping chickens, it's really, really crucial. And it's something you have to consider. Or buy adult chickens, and then you can choose hen. And you don't have to make that choice. So have I convinced you to try out chicken keeping? It can be incredibly rewarding in so many ways. And if you're considering keeping chickens and you don't quite know where to start, then drop me an email because I'd love to talk to you about it. Or come into my Facebook group and let's have a chat about chicken. And I will see you in the next episode.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.